Coach Jenna, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Listen, it was so great last year, wasn't it?
Amazing. You guys did a great job covering us, too. We really appreciated it.
Well, I appreciate it. I mean, I think it was such a fun year, and I remember the couple of times that we talked at the end of the season.
Yes.
And you talked about how that run was unexpected.
It wasn't at all. To be honest, we got very lucky. We were, when it comes to the postseason, you are placed in a draw, and our draw happened to be on the opposite side of all of the major FCAC, like Fairfield County competitors. So we sort of sailed through our side. We had a couple matches that were a surprise. We played a team up near Cheshire that was pretty good, but we got really lucky, and we finished second in the state. It was quite a run.
It was, and that afternoon was fun because I think you guys went in with a very positive attitude to that final.
Totally, yes.
And then, the results were the results were, but you were in very high spirits.
We were in very high spirits. We were really excited to come in second. Some of the competition in the FCAC this season, or last season for that matter, was pretty tough. New Canaan and Greenwich and Darien last year had some really, really stiff competition in addition to Fairfield Ludlow. We got very lucky because they were all on the other side of the draw. But we in past years, it's very interesting when you look at tennis, boys and girls tennis for that matter, because the pendulum really swings quite a bit. Mm-hmm. So Staples the girls' side dominated really, really consistently for a number of years, especially before I got there. We had a number of state championships. And then you'll see that the pendulum will swing. So schools like New Canaan that weren't necessarily strong the first year I came in are now really almost unbeatable, in addition to Greenwich. They just have the depth that some of the other teams just don't have, and they become very difficult to compete against.
Now, you guys, the season last year, like I said, it was maybe some of the meets we went through in the beginning, it was so, you do have some really good talent on that team.
We do, and we're lucky this year actually because we have a couple freshmen that I have my eye on. We haven't had tryouts yet, so it's hard for me to comment.
Right.
But there are a couple freshmen coming up that are really strong singles players, and they're going to add a lot of depth to our team. And as I mentioned to you last year, we were a fairly young team. Yeah. A lot of our good talent was young, so we're going to enjoy that for the next couple of years. And I have 6 graduating seniors, which is a lot.
It is.
So we have space to bring a couple more people up just in anticipation of that class graduating.
Yeah, it's interesting because you're in high school or even in college, right? You're always trying to replace someone that's on your team.
I know.
It's so tricky, isn't it?
It is very tricky, and it's funny in an individual sport that's played like tennis when you are a team and you need those 7 points. You really can build the depth from either the bottom or the top of the ladder. Every single line counts exactly the same. Yeah. So strategically, I think in the past when your singles players, for most schools, like their top players will be at the top of the singles lineup. For us, anticipating that, sometimes it's good to build from the bottom up and look to try to get some points on the double side. Yep. And the Fairfield Ludlow coach has been really, really good about that. This guy, John, he builds his doubles teams. They are really, really strong. And so when you go up against a Fairfield Ludlow, their top player on first singles may not be as impressive as somebody at a different school, but the depth that he enjoys down the bottom to the bottom of the doubles is really, really tough, and that's another smart way to play high school tennis.
It is. So when I played high school many, many moons ago, but it was always about, it's like sometimes you would know the players but not know where they were playing.
Yes.
Right? So a coach would try to sneak in a good player on the 3 and 4 spot because they could probably get that game easier, right? And then you'd round 3 doubles because you got 3. That's 3 points right there if you can win the doubles.
Correct. And what's interesting is you have to play your best players higher. So you can't stack a lineup, in other words, but Chris on the boys' side is very, very good and very talented at manipulating the lineup in a fair way, following the rules, by taking some of your top first and second singles players and putting them into the doubles lineup. As long as you stay in that hierarchy of talent, you're fine. Yeah. And that's a great way to pick up the points.
Right, because it's at the end of the day, it's about the win, right? I mean, you won, obviously you won everything that goes with it, but talk about the team this year. So you said you got some depth. Obviously you haven't had tryouts yet, but what's the expectation for the girls tennis team this year?
So I think, I'm looking forward to a really strong season. I think looking at us compared to the other teams in the FCAC, and of course it's always unpredictable, right? I never thought we'd come in second in the state last year. But if you look at where we're at the FCAC and what players have graduated at different programs, and of course I keep my eye on all of that, And then some players are actually homeschooled, which is so interesting about an individual sport. So you have some players that won't play high school tennis. They live in the district. They end up getting homeschooled for a couple of years to build up their universal tennis ranking so they can be recruited. So there's a lot of moving parts in this. But if you were to take a look at the girls' tennis team at Staples, we're pretty competitive this year. Okay. That's my prediction. I think we're strong in the FCAC. We're going to have some depth. We have a lot of returning veterans, some really strong doubles players, some really strong singles players. And, you know, I think it's going to be a good season. The girls get along really well. We have really, really sweet girls as captains this year. They're going to foster a great, sportsmanship and teamwork and being involved in something bigger than yourself. And I'm always, we talked last year, but I'm always really interested in working on mental health and mental conditioning and stress management, because I think those are tools these kids can take with them out of school and into the classroom and the rest of their life.
Yeah, and you talked about mental. Like I said, one thing that being around you guys last year was how, I want to say, mentally healthy they are. Even on losses or anything that happened and go their way, the girls really stayed upbeat.
Yes.
Talk about the work that you do that with the team and how like you said, how does that prepare them for later in life too?
No, I think it's really important. I think what I've noticed in the last couple of years that I've been coaching is there's a real sharp increase in the amount of anxiety and stress among the students. I mean, Staples is an unbelievable school. It's, one of the top schools in the nation. The academics are incredibly competitive. And as a coach, I always want the girls to feel like this is an outlet for them, not another chore or another stressor. And that's the type of environment that I like to foster on the court. In addition to playing competitive tennis, you can still have fun and enjoy it. And I try to work within their academic schedules and their other commitments to try to, let them lead a well-balanced life, but also putting the commitment into a varsity sport.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question that I've tried, and I don't know if it's put in the spot, but I'm going to do it anyway. Do you think the pressure academically hurts a kid, or is it a positive for a kid?
I think it depends on the kid, to be honest, Steve. It's not a clean answer to that. I think for some kids, having pressure in a environment like Staples can really make them rise to the occasion. But there are students that really could, I think, benefit from having additional support when it comes to mental health, stress, and managing anxiety. Because Staples isn't unique in that sense. A lot of the high schools in our area are incredibly competitive academically. Yeah. And it's a really good school. You get great results from the kids. They're really successful. If you talk to a lot of graduates, they'll tell you they worked harder at Staples than they did in college, no matter what college they go to.
My son said that, yeah.
Yeah, and I have kids that are now, my son's in college, and my daughter graduated college, and I have a little one in at Staples as a freshman, but they work very hard, and they're very, very prepared. And I think the right student can thrive, but I think some students might need additional work on stress management and anxiety management, just like, the teachers and the parents alike. It's a pressure cooker.
It is. So, and I know we're getting off the subject of tennis, but I still want to talk about this. As a parent, is there something that indicates where is my kid thriving on the pressure, or are they crumbling on the pressure?
Yeah, no, I think this is a great question. So now I'm going to put on my, I'm a doctor, so I'm
exactly.
going to put on my MD hat here. So there are definitely red flags and warning signs that somebody might be stressed out or anxious or even suffering from what would be a clinical depression. And you want to watch for those warning signs. So oftentimes it's kids that might pull out of activities that they normally enjoyed. Their performance both on the court, on the field, in the classroom has taken a nosedive. There's an apathy, lack of interest, as I mentioned, sleep disturbances, eating disturbances. At that point, a parent really needs to pick up those red flags and try to get some intervention. Staples is aware and does a great job. Like VJ has put in and prioritized some mental health for athletes, which I think is tremendous, actually. And we should utilize those resources as much as possible. And I'm a huge proponent in teaching parents and kids. I've done workshops throughout Fairfield County with parents and children of athletes, actually looking for those warning signs and how to support an athlete on and off the court, in the classroom, and preparing them to handle some of these experiences that you and I still have as an adult. Yeah,
because you just said it perfectly. You don't know how the kid is going to act.
Yep.
Right on that. But knowing that flags. Now, let's just say you do notice that.
Yes.
What are the steps that you take then to kind of remedy that?
Okay, so it's really an intervention. Like as a coach, I would probably mention it to a parent if I notice some red flags of a stress-related disorder, anxiety, or a depression. And then it's really up to the parent to utilize outside resources from a psychological standpoint, in addition to just, maybe getting a nutritionist on board. In a lot of sports, you also have eating issues, eating disordered eating. Yeah, I've been coaching lots of different teams for a number of years, and these are some of the things that we pick up. So you want to, elicit outside resources from a nutritionist to a psychologist to help in helping a child recognize and manage what could be a disorder.
Yeah, it's mental health is so tricky because there is a stigma around it.
100%.
Right? It's like everybody's okay to take care of the body.
Yes.
Right? I mean, you got a headache, boom, you take some Advil.
Yes.
Right? I mean, you're sick, you're going to take some cough medication. You're going to do that. Yet we don't do that to our minds.
No, we don't. And I think the stigma is even worse for male athletes, to be honest. I think female athletes have an easier time coming forward, and not to say that everybody does, but male athletes have an additional stigma attached to not manning up, unfortunately, which still is pervasive in our society, even though we're fairly more progressive than we were a decade ago. So you don't want these kids to suffer in silence. You can pick up the red flags. I think that's one of the most important roles as a coach for me, and trying to get a child to communicate with me and then looking for outside resources that can support the athlete.
Yeah, and it's like... You coach spend so much time with the kids, right?
Yes.
A lot of time, especially I guess when the season starts, you're kind of with them a lot. And the kids, I don't know, it seems to be it's easier to talk to a coach sometimes than for a parent.
Yes.
Right. So when you're talking about acting like that, it's a perfect example of that.
It is. And I think sometimes like that, it's a very important role of the coach.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't take that lightly. And I think a lot of the coaches are so fantastic at Staples High School. They don't take that responsibility lightly, and I think you can make a huge difference in somebody's life. And I've kept in touch with literally like a ton of girls that I've coached in the past. Mm-hmm. I've written college recommendations. I've spoken to people that have graduated college, and I've attended matches of some of the girls from Staples. So it's a relationship that is a precious one, and it's important because you're not just with them out on the field. You can actually give them tools that they can use for the rest of their life.
And what's you're talking about how important it is. What is the thing you enjoy the most about coaching?
So I'm a women's health doctor.
Right, yeah.
I really enjoy where that meets where the confluence of athletics and sort of adolescent health. And I think looking at the athlete as a total person and trying to support them, as I said, academically, psychologically, physically, really is a privilege for me, and I don't take that lightly either.
Yeah, it's so much fun, and plus you join all the competition, right? Because being in another tennis is fun.
Totally. I'm very competitive, Steve. So that fulfills my competitive side. I get really into these matches. Like, it's amazing because my daughter plays squash for Staples, and it's very difficult being a parent. You know this on the side. You're grabbing someone's hand and you're squeezing as tight as you can. I get very into these matches, and even when my husband and I are playing Boggle or Scrabble, I have to win. So it's built into my personality, and it's a lot of fun to compete.
I like to say winning is everything, but wanting to win is everything.
That's right.
Right?
The attitude is all about the attitude. And also, to that point, it's very important to have the athletes divorce themselves of what is the final outcome in order to play to their potential. One of the things about an individual sport that's so incredibly challenging, because you're not out there on a field with lacrosse players to pick you up and say you're fine. You're really out on that court by yourself, maybe with a partner, maybe alone. And oftentimes in tennis, if you get very tight and very nervous, you're not going to play your best tennis. And it's an allegory. It's very similar to life. If you tighten up, you're not going to give the best public speech. You might not perform well on an exam or in a presentation. And so that's really important for me, for the girls to sort of get into this flow mindset of not worrying about each point and playing that analytical tennis mind that you're like calculating what the next point's going to be, and then, oh my God, I might lose the next match, and then, or the next game, and then the set. To try to stay in that moment, to utilize some mindfulness to get to play your potential so you don't tighten your muscles and you can play as well as you can. Because I think if you walk off the court playing as well as you can, even if you've lost, that to me is a winning mindset. Yeah,
and last year when we sat here the podcast, you mentioned the whole house. Remember I talked about flushing the point. And listen, I haven't played much since then, but I took that advice. It absolutely took.
Yes,
because it's like it works. You just kind of move on to the next point. And I wish like more sports would kind of teach that mentality, because it's the next play. It's the next play.
Correct.
Because you can't do anything about what just happened.
That's right. And there's still a lot of basketball to play, a lot of lacrosse to play. There's a lot of tennis to play. Even if you're up 4-0, you're not done. So even if you win, you have to flush the point and try to stay in the moment. And that's where mindfulness and sort of athletics can like hit each other. And I love that. I love that intersection, because I think it's a great place to be.
So how do you think your girls this year, and like I said, you're bringing back some talent, got some new one, mentally and tough, mental toughness. How do you think the team has from last year to this year? How do you think they've improved, and what are you looking for this year?
Okay, so I think, I definitely am looking for combinations of doubles teams on what we were talking about before.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to have a strong doubles lineup. As I mentioned, a lot of the teams have top talent, real competitive players that will be recruited for college all over the FCAC. And so we're looking at Division I, Division III young women who are top tournament players. And we have a couple on our team as well, but that's always a battle in those top positions on singles. And so not relying necessarily on getting those points, although I think we can with many of the teams, also building that depth up and making sure we have great combinations of doubles. So that's the first thing. The next thing, their relationships with each other is really, really important. I want everybody to get along. I think it's important that we have a great time out there. We have 6 seniors. I don't take that lightly. I want them to have a phenomenal senior year on the tennis team, because many of them have been on. Well, 3 of them are the OGs. They were on for Rhea, Maddie, and Lola have been on since they were freshmen.
Wow, okay.
So, it's important that they enjoy their senior year. It's sort of their capstone and the culmination of everything that they've put in. And we have, Bridget Meninger and Emma Cantor and Sadie Yanks also coming back. So 6 of those seniors, it's going to be a fun season for them.
Yeah, it was so much fun last year. I think, like I said, it's I obviously we look at results, but I always look at experience.
Yes.
And it's like, at least for me, it was always a great experience being around your team, because I felt like the energy was up.
Yes.
To me, it's like, okay, well, yeah, the result's great, but it's like, if you have a good time, you take that feeling with you.
You do. You absolutely do. And I think your point about experience is really important, because you can be a phenomenal tennis player, but not play high school tennis yet. Mm. Then you have, 50 guys hanging on the back of a backstop at Darien High School screaming, and it's a lot. There are a lot of skills that you have to harness. You can be the best tennis player, but you have to be resilient and be able to focus amidst a lot of obstacles that may be presented to you.
Yeah, and in tennis, it's funny because there's just so much out there for tennis. And here's what I'll say about tennis. It's like, I love tennis. I played it. So before Netflix came out with a Turning Point, did you watch the point?
Yes.
It's like the year before, I was at the Open, and the tickets were fairly, fair. The next year, the tickets were and I think
skyrocketed.
Right? Is this because of the popularity of the sport?
In my corner, I grew up going to the U.S. Open, so we have seats every year. So we, had our own little area, and you did see the prices just skyrocket. I think the movie absolutely plays into that. If you look at even medicine, for example, when ER came out, the number of medical school applications skyrocketed.
Really? I didn't know that.
In addition to Grey's Anatomy. And some of these legal dramas also, you'll see a huge spike in the number of people applying to law school. Pop culture definitely plays into trends. But I do think post-COVID, I think during COVID, right, where we had to see a stop of a lot of tournaments and sports play, not unique to tennis, but the prices all went up and they never came back down. So when you go there and you want to just have a drink or you want to have a sandwich, it's like $35. It's outrageous. And it never came down.
No, it never did.
No, and now the tickets it's like Broadway, though. Broadway, too, is, $400 to see a Broadway show. It's unaffordable for most people.
Yeah, it's and now you said something about pop culture playing an influence on what people do.
Yes.
Because I've always been I didn't realize what you just said about the applications in college and things like that.
Yes.
How I always thought it was more it's a trend and it's going to go away. But you could impact someone's life forever.
Totally.
And so if you look at it that way, what we watch and what we do has such an effect on our lives.
It does.
And how do you kind of, navigate through that?
That's a big topic, Steve.
Right, it is.
But, to this point, one of the reasons that I think we've seen an increase in stress is because people really are very preoccupied with what they're watching and what they're seeing. right? It's like instant gratification for a lot of these kids, whether they're on TikTok or using some of these apps. Like, even to sit down and watch a movie with my family is a big deal because my kids' attention span is much more of a binge show rather than a 2.5-hour feature-length movie, where that would be such a treat for me. It's a chore for my kids. We're used to instant gratification. We're seeing a lot of like images constantly, and you have to really, I think as a parent, you really have to limit that. And also as a coach, I think it's really important to be in the here and now. Even like taking my kids to like different concerts, whether it's Taylor Swift or like Olivia Rodrigo, I'm thinking of Piper, my little one. Yeah. Everybody's on their phone. Yeah. I mean, no one's even watching the concert in real time. It's insane. So I actually stood behind somebody at the Olivia Rodrigo concert who was taping the whole thing. I was watching the concert on her phone because I couldn't see. And they're like Snapchatting and they're turning it around, and it's like. Well,
I always, I've been good at not doing that because I feel like I try to be in the moment as much as I can.
You're doing that. I think PrepZone is in the moment. It's amazing.
I try like doing, when we try, if I always say like the reason that I bring people along with me, like, well, you can either do one or the other.
Yes.
You can either be captioned or you can be taking it all in.
Yep.
So when I'm at a meet or whatever, I try to take it all in. I try to walk and not be so much on so that I can understand what's going on.
100%.
Because I tell people like, why I only write about events I'm in because one thing is the results and one thing what really happened.
Yes.
Because you can see like
two different stories.
Yeah, the result might be one thing, but it might not be really what happened there. Like again, that tennis final. The results were as it was, but it was such a positive experience for everyone involved.
Correct.
So you can't do that. But, as I look at that and you try to tie it in to the experience that they have and all that, how can parents make, less stressful for the kids in a meet?
I think the tennis parent is a unique parent.
That's yes. I've dealt with tennis parents. So because my dad was a tennis parent. So
yes.
And I'm just trying to come of it's like, the kids come in and they want to, and a lot of times here's where I summarize what I'm thinking. When I play a game and I lose that game, I don't feel as bad as when I watch the game and I'm rooting for and the team lost.
Yes.
Right. So how do parents or anybody who's watched, how do we foster that?
Yeah, that's very smart. I think parents need to, especially like in these individual sports, parents need to take a step back because I think the player feels the loss, but then also feels bad for the parent who feels bad about the loss, which compounds the situation for the athlete.
Yep.
And I think parents really need to focus on effort and people playing the best that they can play. Those are the issues that parents really need to sort of whittle down where their support is going. For me, like watching my child play squash, because she's become pretty competitive, if she plays to the best of her ability, like I mentioned before, and she has what I call a good loss, where she went out and really tried her best, that's something I'm really gonna compliment her about. And it's trying to put in hard work to achieve something. But the other thing is, I think in these individual sports, to let their kids know that they're being part of and a member of something bigger than themselves is an incredibly important lesson, because this is our last chance with our kids, right? Especially in high school. We're role models for them to a certain point, and then they're really out the door. If you're part of a team sport, you're enlisting in something bigger than yourself. And so that type of sportsmanship and support of your teammates and working to the best of your ability to achieve a goal is a unique opportunity in time. And for many of these players, they're not going to play competitively ever again.
Right. The percentage of people who could play in college is very small. Now, this next question kind of is a question for me and for other people. Individual sports are very tricky to cover because the time that you're looking at individual, but also looking at as a whole.
Yes.
Right? So as a coach, let's just say put your parent cap on. How would you, kind of give advice, say, okay, my kid didn't play so great, but the team won, or vice versa. How do you evaluate that entire meet?
Right. So I think the end result is always important because that's the way the team performed. I think if a child doesn't perform up to their best ability and they feel like they didn't play the best that they could, I won't address usually right in the moment because they're feeling bad enough. I think the worst thing that you can do, especially with a female athlete, I know that guys are a little bit, this is a generalization, but I've noticed in coaching, and I just coached the squash team at GFA.
I know, I was going to ask you about that later. Yeah.
So just noticing the difference between, there's some gender differences, and again, they're generalizations. There are young women that will be able to take constructive criticism immediately, and some guys won't want to at all. But I did notice there was one of our players that lost a very, very important match, and the team lost. And one of our coaches went up to tell her what she could have done better, and it was the wrong time. The timing is everything. She sort of needed to absorb that, take a minute. The instruction by the coach or the parent, for that matter, it led itself into a puddle of tears. And you can avoid that. So I think letting the athletes sort of absorb what's going on and then coming back and talking to them at a later point and asking them what they think they could have done better or what they want to work on. Sometimes you have a bad day, so there's nothing to work on. Sometimes there's a skill set that if you're playing an individual sport, playing against a certain opponent might reveal that, right?
True,
it may be a weak, backhand, or you need to work on your down the line shot, or your overhead, you hit every single one into the net. There may be a skill that you need to sharpen up on, and that's something that you should visit afterwards. But the parent needs to support the emotions rather than ride the kid. And I've seen so many aggressive parents turn their kids off so dramatically to a sport that they don't want to play anymore. Even recruited athletes that are playing in college will get into college due to an individual sport and then drop out because the pressure has been way too much. And the parent contributes to that sometimes.
If there's no fun, I don't think the kid's going to stay 100%.
on it. 100%. And I reminded the girls actually last year, go back to the time when you were a little girl and enjoyed this sport. What brought you to this court in the first place? And that's really important. That's the energy you want to harness.
Yeah, it absolutely does that. And you're talking about hitting all the overheads in the net. I was like, well, that was me when I was playing. It's like those overheads.
Those are the worst.
It's
shots.
all about timing, right? You figure I got this, and then the timing comes. It's like as a tennis player, it's so hard to. If you have never played tennis, but I've played, so I totally relate to the overheads into the net. Nothing more demoralizing when you hit that overhead.
No, because everyone's staring at you, and you have a lot of time to just line up, and you're going to put it away, and then it hits the net.
But and as you're talking again, listening to what's being said. It is. Last year I had I think it was this year already, but I want to talk about confidence.
Yes.
I think it was Coach Sparks was here from the girls basketball.
Yes.
And he coached boys and girls as you have, and he said that in his opinion, one of the main differences is that sometimes in boys you have to tone their ego down, and in girls you have to lift them up.
Interesting.
Because they feel like sometimes it's just in your experience. How can a coach do that, and how do they navigate that? And is that something that you've seen?
I think it's interesting because I think we've been societalized. What Coach Sparks is recognizing, I think we've been societalized to feel that way. And let me give you an example. I coached PAL basketball, and we had a phenomenal girl on our team, tall, excellent, incredible basketball player, 4th grade basketball, okay? I mean, she really was she could probably be a college recruit. She's now rowing at a private school, but she was an excellent basketball player. What was very interesting was instead of celebrating this girl, which I think would have happened if I were coaching boys, the other coaches came up to me, men, and said, it's not fair, okay? And she should play with her left hand. It's mind-blowing because it was we should be celebrating this athlete. This is a runaway, really good star. And instead of building her up, now we're going to cut her down. And so that to me is a bit of how we societalize our athletes. So girls sort of need to apologize, and boys are more celebrated in that sense. Now, of course, these are generalizations. Right. I'm really into gender differences.
Right. I've written a book on... and that's what I'm bringing... Because here's the thing. I feel like it's an issue that... and at PrepZone, we try to cover the sports equally.
Yes.
Boys and girls.
Yes.
But obviously, we see a difference on... how society sees it, right?
100%.
And even this, and you can see just the amount of people that go to boys' games, but girls'
and
games.
Professionally too, and in college, same thing.
Same thing. So my whole point is this: can we, because I feel like I don't take lightly what we do at PrepZone because I think showcasing these things could have a big impact. One thing somebody came to me and said, "Do you realize that maybe that interview that you're doing might be the highlight of this kid's life?"
Yep.
Right? Yes. So I take very seriously what we do. But I see that, and I kind of want to tackle it because, if you can make a difference in one kid's life, you've done that.
100%.
So that's why I'm bringing it up, because how do we tackle this issue?
I love this topic. I think, it's a multifactorial long conversation. Right. I think one of the benefits, and again, I'll go back to VJ, he has done a really great job equalizing the sports at Staples. And it's made a difference. He shows up to all of the sports. So does Stafford, actually. Yeah. They really show up to girls and boys sports alike. They've been very, very supportive of the girls' programs. There used to even be salary differences. You know, I mean, not necessarily at Staples, but even if you look across the board, even in college. Yeah. So we need to fight it as a society, obviously, and it's sort of an issue that's bigger than us. But I think what you're doing is exactly right. Like, you cover equally all of these sports. Like, I watch a lot of your coverage. I'm a real, sports fanatic. So I watch a lot of stuff with PrepZone, and I'm watching a lot of collegiate, girls basketball, boys basketball at my son's college. If there's an interest there, and there was an interest last year at his college, the girls had a huge run in the NCAA, and the interest really went up, and the coverage on ESPN was high. Yeah. So it's bottom up, I think, but it's something we all really need to tackle. But getting back to your point about confidence, I think we need to work on that as an entire community. I think that boys and girls alike who have ability, here's the real issue. I think in our district, what's been really interesting is there's been sort of this ideology of everybody gets a medal, especially in elementary school and in middle school. And then all of a sudden you're dropped into Staples, which is incredibly competitive, filled with tons of really talented kids. And not everybody's getting a medal anymore. And I think it's okay to recognize, there are kids that are really good at this and some kids that are not as good at this, but really good at this, and celebrate, regardless of their gender, regardless of their background or their culture. This is what we're going to celebrate, and it's okay to feel good about your accomplishments. And I think that's really, really important, and I think it needs to be gender neutral, because I will always go back to that time in that basketball game where you have this outstanding athlete and now she's feeling sort of ashamed of her ability. That's the message she's getting.
It's mind-boggling that would happen. and to me, it's like you were saying that, and I don't know where I read it, and I'm going to try to remember it 100%, but it was almost like if your kid, and I'm going to translate to sports, let's just say your kid's playing, tennis and they're playing basketball.
Yes.
If they are better at tennis, you don't, and not so good at basketball, you don't get them a basketball tutor. You actually get them another racket per se.
Right.
So you kind of focus on what they're good at.
Yes.
Right? You think that's where you kind of build that confidence?
I think so. I think one of the, there's a lot of changes over the decades. One of them, when you and I were in school, being very well-rounded and being able to play 4 sports was a big deal. I played 4 sports in middle school, and then in high school it was 3 sports. Yeah. People don't do that now. As you said, if somebody has an ability in ice hockey, for example, that's what they're doing 24/7. So I think on one hand, it's an advantage because you're really building competency and a tremendous ability. But on the other hand, they're sort of missing out on some of the other things they might enjoy, and things get very seriously, very, very serious very quickly. So I'm mixed on that. But I do think being able to celebrate what you're good at and building a child up and not making them feel like they need to be self-aware or self-conscious of that is very, very important. And I think that happens more to girls.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt, because it's, I just, right before we did this, I was talking to Coach K, and he's talked about, Caleb being, he's playing Division I football.
Yep.
But in the spring, instead of the football, he's playing club lacrosse.
Yep.
And he's like, well, he just loves lacrosse.
Yep.
And he's just going to do what he loves and stay. And I love that idea.
So do I. Totally.
Because you're opening up. It's a whole new set of friends. It's a whole new environment.
100%.
And you got to adapt to it.
Exactly. And I think that speaks a lot to the athlete, because here's someone who is outstanding in one sport and has a love of another sport and is on the club level and still enjoying himself. It takes a tremendous amount of confidence and, really, I mean, self-awareness. It's pretty impressive.
Right? I thought it's a pretty good story.
Yeah.
Because it's like, and for me, it's like, everything, ever since we started PrepZone, we cover all these sports, and we see kind of the kids who go through the multiple sports, and they seem to be the ones that are enjoying themselves the most.
Agreed. I think so. I think we need to bring that back a little bit.
We do, because you know what? It's like maybe they haven't been playing that sport all season long. So when the season gets here, it's new.
Yes.
It's fresh. And we as human beings, you're talking about the attention span going all back to that. It's like, we don't want to do the same thing over and over.
Totally.
We want new things in our lives.
Totally.
You don't watch the same show over and over. You want a new show.
Correct.
Every week.
And I also think, certain sports are lifetime sports, right? So you're not going to be playing football when you're 40 years old. That's the advantage of these racket sports, to be able to pick something up. In college, I played squash in college. We had the men's ice hockey team used to play with us.
That's awesome.
For conditioning, and many of them just picked up the sport, and they were really, really good. But it's something that they kept playing after they graduated.
You talked about Lifetime Sport the other day. You know how our feeds, are crazy on these apps, right?
Yes.
So there was a feed of the 90-year-old tennis open somewhere. I don't know what it was. And these older gentlemen were playing, and they were so slow, but they were still playing at 9 years old. I'm
love
like, I wish at 90 I can still hit the ball.
Yep.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, and their serves are like so slow, but it was so cute to watch. And I'm like, this is the goal.
Amazing.
This
totally.
is the goal.
That's the goal. And I think what's to that point, I think you've seen an explosion of racket sports all over, especially Connecticut, where pickleball has completely taken over. And have you played padel?
Oh, I don't know. What is that?
So that's like that indoor glass court.
Then they can hit from the outside.
Yes.
I've seen a lot of videos on that.
Insane.
You've played that?
So that's taking off. I played it with a couple of pros. You have to be in great shape for that. It's a lot of fun. Very fast. It's sort of where tennis and squash meet.
Why is it different than paddle? Because paddle, you play off the back net.
Correct. It's the length of the court is different and the rules are a little bit different. And you're playing, you have screens in like platform tennis or paddle tennis.
Yeah.
But now people confuse it with paddle and padel. Padel, came from Europe and it's here to stay, and it's like a craze. It's all over New York City. And,
really?
Yeah, Miami. It's crazy.
Well, I'm all one for trying new things.
You come out and play, Steve.
Because the thing is, like, I remember there was this big stigma about pickleball, right?
Yes.
And then when I played, I'm like, this is great. Not easy on the knees.
No.
I thought the movements are very fast.
Yes.
Yeah. So I felt my knees a couple times I played it because it's just like the movements they're sharp and fast movements. It's
60% of X-rays going through Greenwich Hospital right now are from pickle injuries.
No way, really?
I'm not kidding. And the problem is that a lot of elderly people play,
right,
which is great because it gets people out on the court, but it looks much easier on the body than it is, and you might reach for something or turn your hip in some way, and people are getting injured, so it's important to stretch before you play.
Well, I'll say this. And this is going to tell my age, and people are going to laugh. So I go to the Y Open pickleball. Have you ever been in the Y Open pickleball?
No.
So basically, the YMCA in Westport has this, it's open pickle, because if you don't have a partner, just go, right? and listen, not to say, but the age there, like I'm 45. I am 45, and I'm like the youngest one there. But the point being is that they're good at what they do. They're very good. Like there's no, it's a challenging form. I'm not a great pickleball player, but still very fun to play.
So much fun.
But the thing is, like, the age is up there, and like you said, I'm thinking, if this is hard on my joints,
yes,
I can imagine what their bodies are going through. So it is scary.
It is scary. You have to be careful. It's misleading. It looks much, because it's a wiffle ball. It looks much easier than it is.
Yeah, because you're hitting the ball a little harder than usually when it's not going so well. So you try to do that and all that.
And you reach down for it. And
it's so funny. The story was I played with this elderly couple, and the husband and wife went one way. So I played with the wife, and apparently the wife had never beaten the husband.
Okay.
So we won, obviously. So the next,
with you, of
right?
course.
So the next game, the husband like, no, you coming with me. She's going with somebody else, which I thought was a great story. It's like, I've become the star player at the YMCA. Right. It was so funny, but again, it's going out of your comfort zone and doing different things. I loved it, because to me it was like, okay, well, this is something I've never done. I've never come on the open pickleball at the
right.
But you meet all these people, and and you talk, and to me, was, again, the sport was great, but the experience of being there with them and how nice they won. Then the other day I saw someone in the grocery store, and they were talking about it.
Yeah.
So you have that connection with people.
It's really nice.
And that's what I feel sports are all about.
I agree, totally.
And it's like in your mind, and everything gets into it. But then let's close the season. What do you, today for the tennis team, what do you think this is going to go like? What are your expectations? Where do you see this team going?
I think we have a good shot at finishing in the top 4. If we're in the top 4 to 5 spots of the FCAC, I'll be very happy. That would be my goal this season. We have a lot of depth. Other teams do too. Just looking at New Canaan and Greenwich, they are really, really strong and really tough to beat, and they didn't graduate that many people. Mm-hmm. Wilton, who was stronger than usual last year, lost a couple players who are just not going to play. As I mentioned to you, sometimes the teams don't play necessarily on the roster at the high school. They'll play individually. So they've lost a couple people, which is going to weaken them up a bit. Fairfield Ludlow lost a couple graduates. And Darien, I think, is not as strong as they won't be as strong. So I think we have a good shot at, top 4, top 3 in the FCAC, which would be tremendous. And then fingers crossed for another great draw for the state.
Yeah. Listen, those tournaments are crazy, because you just never know. Like I said, someone's not having a good day. Injuries play a big factor in the season. Is everybody going to stay healthy?
Well, that's another thing. And when you have a sport like this where each line matters, injuries can really hurt a team.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the boys last year. I think played the whole year without serving overhead. I mean, so it's like obviously that's a challenge for him. But you have to overcome those things as the season goes along. You just never know what this is going to teach.
Yes, it's crazy about Noah Wolf. Recruited with an underhand serve.
Right,
he's a tremendous tennis player.
I know. It's like I was like, listen, even serving overhand, I had enough trouble. I can't imagine if I'm lobbing the ball back to the guys, what that was going to be like. But. It doesn't go mentally, right? How it's like I always felt like, yes, it is. He is doing the hand, but the other guy's never seen someone play an entire game. So it's like it takes a little while to adjust.
Major throw you, and his underhand serve's pretty impressive. So
yeah, it's like because you don't know how to handle some things.
Yep.
It's just like the mental aspect of everything we do. To me, is fascinating.
It is actually. I think a lot when you get to be a really top racket sports player, the difference between being a champion, I think, and being a good player is mindset. You will notice that I'd say 80% of the athletes that come out on top have a very, very strong mindset and a strong mental game. It makes a huge difference.
And it's interesting. I feel like we celebrate the craziness.
Yes.
Right? I mean, you look at the players who are like, who throw their rackets around.
Yes.
That's what everybody wants to watch. Nobody wants to watch the calm, cool, collected player.
Right. That's right.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's like as a society, we want like.
Of course.
It's like we can't look away from the wreck, right?
Yes.
Everybody's driving like at half speed to make sure
it's
what
true.
happened.
It's
right?
true. Totally.
It's like I always feel like it's and I tell my kids all the time, we are sometimes a society that will judge people by their worst moment.
Yep.
And we need to change that.
Yes.
Because everyone has bad moments.
Yes.
So you need to just start looking at people at what are they doing well.
Right, exactly.
Right? And that's part of it.
It is.
So
there's a lot to learn in sports. I think there are lifetime lessons. I had a soccer coach when I played travel soccer younger, and my coach said soccer is an extension of life. I think we were in middle school and we're all like rolling our eyes at him, but that quote stuck with me because it's absolutely true. Sports are an extension of life and they teach you a lot, and it represents how you're going to act, I think, in any kind of setting.
Yeah, you mentioned soccer. I'll say something that Chris O'Dell. So my son played freshman soccer for Chris O'Dell.
Yes.
And freshman is, like you coming from a travel environment where you're always yelling at refs, yelling at everyone, right? Now in high school, it's like the refs are a lot less tolerant of parents, right? And then the coaches seem to try to control it more. We were playing a game in Stanford, and I don't know, there's maybe like 10 parents there, right? There's not a lot of people watching travel soccer on a Saturday at 10 a.m.
Right.
But not high school soccer. But there was a foul, whatever, and somebody complained. And then, and then the ref just went to Chris, said, you got to throw the parent out. So Chris threw the parent out. But Chris sent an email to me that I never forgot, to all the parents, actually. Because I wasn't a parent. Just for the record, I was not the parent that got thrown out of the game. But he said that he didn't want the parents to say anything because he was teaching the kids life. And what he was saying is like, okay, a foul happens.
Yep.
If it doesn't get called, you get up and go. If it gets called, you put the ball down and go, because that's how life is. Bad stuff is going to happen to you.
100%.
You can stay here and complain about the bad stuff, or you can just move on.
You're actually derailing yourself. I'll tell the girls that you're actually playing against not just your opponent, but also yourself.
100%.
And that can derail you. Yeah. And there are going to be bad calls in every game, and they're on both sides. And so you just have to roll with it.
You look at the professional level.
Yeah.
I mean, right? And again, I was a soccer referee, and people are like, well, I said, first of all, nobody's trying to mess up.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. And second, like the guys who do this for a living make mistakes that we can't even believe.
Yep.
Think about someone who just worked a 9-to-5 job and is going out there to coach to ref a game,
yes.
right?
Yes.
How do you think they're going to be mentally? So everything's just, you all need to take a breath.
Yep.
And just let the kids play.
Yep, exactly.
Right? Let the kids play. Agree. Yeah. No, this has been so great. I always enjoy talking to you so much. I think we go to like so many different topics. So we would need hours to elaborate on every one of those talks. But listen, I can't wait for this season. I think it's going to be great.
Thank you.
When are tryouts again?
We're starting up this weekend. So we're Saturday. We're going through Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and then we'll probably have the rosters by Wednesday.
And then the 7th is your first game? Or is that the first meet? Or is it, because I think the 5th, or like it starts that weekend, does it not?
I think we have a couple scrimmages coming up, to be honest. We're playing Weston and GFA in a scrimmage still in March.
Okay. But like the official
31st.
Season is a 4th to 7th, something like that, right?
So you probably know better than me.
Yeah, I was looking at the schedule. I mean, I have all your schedule on the phone. I just want to make sure we get out there and look at that first. I mean, it's always fun. Like I said, I enjoy it. I think it's spring. Spring to me is my favorite times of the year because summer is just around the corner.
Yes.
I feel fall is great weather, but it's like winter's coming.
You're right, exactly.
Like we love Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones so much. Gonna say winter's coming, right? That's why fall to me is great. Although I love the football and all that, but like, man, winter's coming. Yep. I can see. Yep. So that phrase has stuck with me for a life. Winter's coming. Totally. Yeah, like that. And you were talking about being competitive. I felt like saying, well, I've coached against you in rec soccer. I know you're competitive. Right?
It's true.
We all are to a degree. It's like and like I said, I feel like it's good. Like you want to teach your kid, like, because that will, to win. 100%. I think it's important.
100%.
You don't want to go through life and just like whatever. No, you want to make it happen.
Totally.
Make your way, make things happen, and and just hope everything else for that. But be mentally strong that if it doesn't go your way, you can still pick yourself up.
Correct.
Oh, it was awesome.
Thank you, Steve.
Jenna, thanks so much for being on the show. I appreciate it so much, and good luck on the season. We'll see you guys in the court.
We'll see you out there.